In a quiet Colorado town, Mark Dawson was enjoying a peaceful morning on his family's 80-acre land. The land had been in the Dawson family since 1920, bought by his great-great-grandfather Henry. As he sipped his coffee, a distant rumbling caught his ear. Bulldozers. Mark grabbed his coat and sprinted toward the eastern edge of the property. What he saw stopped him cold. 3 massive machines were tearing into the soil, while a woman in a sleek business suit barked orders nearby. "What the hell's going on here?" he shouted. The woman, Jessica, turned with a cool smile. "This is the new Westview HOA development site. We've got all the permits." Mark's jaw clenched. "This is my land. It's been in my family for over a century." Jessica tapped her tablet. "County records listed as abandoned. If you have a problem, talk to our lawyers." Mark stood frozen, shaking with anger. The machines kept digging. He stormed back home and pulled out an old chest from the attic. Inside was the original deed, yellowed but intact. As he flipped through the pages, one line caught his eye. "Any structure built without consent shall legally belong to the landowner." Mark's eyes lit up. Henry had built in a trap, a 100-year-old legal time bomb. Jessica had no idea, but every shovel of dirt was making Mark richer. He smiled. Game on. And just like that, he chose to wait. Mark took the deed to his lawyer, Tom. Tom scanned the document, stunned. "Your great-great-grandfather was a genius. This clause means anything built here without your approval becomes yours." Mark leaned forward. "So we stop them?" Tom smirked. "Or we wait. The more they build, the more you'll own." Mark nodded slowly. That actually made sense. The next day, Mark began documenting everything, taking photos, recording progress. Westview was moving fast. In 2 weeks, 12 homes were already framed. One afternoon, Jessica noticed him watching from the hill. She waved mockingly. "Hope you like the view. These houses are selling like crazy." Mark smiled but said nothing. Months passed. 50 homes went up. Streets were paved, mailboxes installed. Mark documented every brick. Then he saw it. A billboard in town. "Welcome to Oak Ridge Homes, starting at $450,000. Jessica gave a young couple a tour. She noticed Mark in the distance and laughed. "Our neighbor's just grumpy." Mark walked up and said, "Nice house." Back home, he called Tom. "How long do we wait?" "Until they finish all 156. Then, you take it all." "This land is my family's legacy," Mark said. Patience was his sharpest weapon. Jessica thought she was winning. She had no idea she was walking into a century-old trap. Winter arrived. Oak Ridge kept growing. 100 homes stood proudly. Families moved in. Mark watched quietly from his porch. Christmas lights twinkled. Kids laughed. Technically, it was all his. Jessica made headlines. "Oak Ridge, the region's top development," the papers read. Mark just muttered, "Not over yet." He met with Tom. "Will the families get hurt?" "No," Tom assured him. "Westview's responsible. You're just enforcing the law." Mark nodded. He decided to stay silent until the last nail was driven. By April, it was done. All 156 homes, a clubhouse, a pool. Jessica planned a grand opening. Press, champagne, even the mayor. Mark suited up. In his hands, the deed and years of evidence. At the ceremony, Jessica stood at the mic, glowing. This land was once forgotten. but we turned it into a community. Mark stepped forward. Excuse me. The crowd turned. My name is Mark Dawson. This land has belonged to my family for over 100 years. Westview built here illegally. He held up the deed. There's a clause. Any unapproved structure belongs to the landowner. Jessica laughed. That's ridiculous. But her lawyer, scanning the document, turned pale. Jessica, we have a problem, he whispered. The crowd gasped. Mark stood calm, steady, victorious. A 100-year-old trap had just snapped shut, and he was the one holding the key. The grand opening turned into chaos. Jessica shouted, "Our legal team will handle this!" But her voice was shaking. Mark held firm. The deed is clear. Every structure built without permission belongs to me. The mayor turned, stunned. Is this true? Tom stepped forward. 3 attorneys have verified it. This clause has been valid since 1920. Reporters scribbled furiously. Families whispered nervously. Jessica turned to Mark. Why now? Why didn't you say something sooner? Mark looked her dead in the eyes. I warned you on day 1. You didn't listen. Westview's lawyer examined the document, his face pale. Jessica, this is real. The crowd dispersed. Jessica stood frozen in disbelief. The next day, Mark's phone didn't stop ringing. News outlets, lawyers, furious Westview board members. Headline, HOA builds $70 million neighborhood on the wrong property. Westview made an offer, $5 million to walk away. Mark said no. Those homes, they're mine, all of them. Weeks of negotiations followed. Westview grew desperate. The second offer, $20 million. Mark stood his ground. $60 million, or we go to court. And don't worry, I'll protect the homeowners. Eventually, a deal was struck. $48 million. The clubhouse and 12 unsold homes were his. Jessica resigned. Westview issued a public apology. Mark looked out over the land. My great-great-grandfather would be proud. The trap had worked, but the story wasn't over. Mark was now a wealthy man, $48 million richer, plus the community center and a dozen houses. But he wasn't thinking about luxury. I won't make anyone homeless, he said. He ensured every homeowner got their deed. Westview covered the cost. With the rest, he launched the Dawson Foundation, building affordable homes across the town. The clubhouse became public space, tennis lessons for kids, swim hours for seniors. The 12 homes sold at cost to teachers, firefighters, and nurses. The town called him a hero. One afternoon, Mark visited the records office. He found an old note from Henry. This land is legacy. Protect tomorrow. Mark whispered, I did. Oak Ridge residents grew to love him. Monthly BBQs, laughter echoing through the streets. Jessica's house went up for sale. No one said a word. Mark stood at the top of the hill. This isn't an invasion anymore. It's a home. Henry's clause hadn't just punished greed. It had rewarded grace. YouTube narrators ask, what would you do? Wait a century for justice? Is this karma or destiny? Drop a comment. Mark had honored his roots. Westview's mistake united a community. Oak Ridge had a new heartbeat. The community center was thriving. Kids splashed in the pool. Neighbors shared stories over coffee. Mark looked around, smiling.
My great-great-grandfather could have never imagined this.
The Dawson Foundation kept growing. Dozens more families now had homes. One day, a former Westview employee called.
Jessica's working for another firm, trying the same tricks.
Mark chuckled.
She'll learn, eventually.
The town never forgot the story. How a 100-year-old clause took down an HOA giant. Mark framed the deed and hung it in his living room. At a summer BBQ, a family approached. "Thank you for our home." Mark smiled. "You gave me purpose." Meanwhile, Westview teetered on the edge of bankruptcy. Mark didn't care.
Their greed buried them,
he said simply. YouTube asks,
156 homes, one trap, one man's patience. Was Mark right? Does kindness make the best revenge? Comment below.
Mark stood on the land his family once fought to keep.
This is my family now.
A single line in a deed from 1920 had rewritten the present. Justice didn't make a sound. It simply endured.